Ocarina of Time has plenty of dungeons with varied themes and mechanics, as well as plenty of puzzles and, in some cases, slight challenge. Having recently played them all again, I'm gonna give my 2 cents on them. All of my thoughts will be based on the normal versions, not the Master Quest ones. This time, I'll go over the 3 dungeons you run through as a child. Not long after you begin your journey, you'll enter the Great Deku Tree. Compared to lots of 3D Zeldas that have the first hour or so pretty mellow, this is intense. I mean, you go inside of a living being to cure said being of a curse. The atmosphere is mysterious as you go through the passages of the tree to see what's been plaguing it. The music is what plays in generic caves, which is a bit disappointing, but adds to the ambience nonetheless. The interior is adorned with plenty of vines and branches that have grown with the tree over time. The enemies are plentiful. There's keys flying around, Skulltulas making spiderwebs and feeding off of the life of the tree, Dekubabas that you can collect the branches of, and children of the monster keeping the curse going. There's also the Deku Scrubs who serve that creature. Their super secret password will always be one of the most iconic moments from this game. Most of the puzzles revolve around getting past cobwebs that have built up in the tree over time or have been placed by the Skulltulas, usually by burning them with a Deku stick. They're pretty easy to figure out, but some of them are pretty neat. Jumping into the web in the center of the main chamber from a high ledge is very satisfying. Rolling into a web with a torch in your hand is also creative. The slingshot is a decent starting dungeon item. Ammo isn't much of a problem, especially if you got upgrades later. It's very useful throughout your child journey as a long-range weapon, and has a few purposes in the Deku Tree like being able to shoot switches and eyes. The dungeon is a joke for difficulty, but that's to be expected being early on in an already easy game. Navi makes things obvious and is a huge pest here. It's pretty short too. The gold Skulltulas are in conspicuous locations if you choose to get them. The most pathetic thing is the boss, Goma. It can easily be defeated in one cycle with Deku sticks. You'd expect more from something that was able to withhold a curse in a long-lived tree. Overall, I really like the Deku Tree. It's a bit lacking in difficulty, but that doesn't hinder the great atmosphere of puzzles. Either way, it's certainly livelier than some other beginnings in Zelda. After parting with the Deku Tree, meeting Zelda, and watching a Goron do his infectious happy dance, you enter Dodongo's Cavern. Why it's called Dodongo's Cavern is an unsolved conundrum. You only encounter a couple of normal-sized ones throughout the whole cave, confined to one room no less. It should really be called Lizalfo's Cavern, since you encounter more of those than Dodongo's. The theme of Dodongo's cave is uninteresting. It's a cave, and no more than that. Most of the walls are colored gray and brown, which doesn't help. The music isn't music, it's noise. Overall, the mood of this dungeon is pretty bland. The only engaging structure is the massive Dodongo corpse at the front of the main chamber, which, unlike everything else here, has plenty of color. In order to get all the gold Skulltulas, you'll have to come back when you have the necessary items, which is cool, though it can be a little annoying. The majority of the puzzles in Dodongo's Cavern revolve around the Goron special crop. You'll have to find ways to blow up things without bombs in your inventory until you get the bomb bag late in the dungeon. Like in the Deku Tree, these puzzles are easy to figure out, but there are a few neat ones. Throwing a bomb flower in between 2 lines of explosives to create a chain reaction, and using baby Dodongo's explosions to destroy a wall stick out in my mind. With Dodongo's Cavern being a longer dungeon, however, these puzzles get more tedious before the end. The difficulty with enemies in general is increased since the Deku Tree, but difficulty with puzzles isn't, and I would have expected that it would at least a little. The boss is even more pathetic than Goma. All you have to do is throw a bomb into its mouth when it's preparing attack. It's also very uncreative, just being a large Dodongo. Dodongo's Cavern might be mundane, but that doesn't make it atrocious. It just makes it underwhelming. Due to it being this way though, I'd certainly consider it the weakest out of the child dungeons. The last destination in the first half of your quest, inside Jabu Jabu's belly, in my opinion, doesn't get enough love. Like the first dungeon, you're going inside a living being. This time, though, it's twice as insane. Weird is delivered in 20-ton packages. Just look at some of the stuff you'll encounter here. It's hard to come by a room without something electrified, too. The corridors of this place are crazy even for the inside of a fish's stomach. Granted, nothing can be good simply for being out of place or bizarre, but it's impossible not to love this dungeon's eccentric charm. The music actually has a beat, unlike the last dungeon, but it isn't too intrusive. It's unsettling and slightly off-center, fitting for a place with so many strange set pieces. This dungeon is very non-linear. You can go in a room that's part of a later puzzle and find something of interest there even before you're anywhere close to taking on that puzzle. You can also travel through groups of rooms the opposite way that you normally would. The puzzles are a lot more interesting here. They aren't confined to one room. Figuring out how to take on each of the 3 tentacles is very memorable. Along the way, you'll travel with the brat Princess Ruto. Sure, her character is obnoxious, but she doesn't get in the way too much. She's involved in puzzles too. You might have to set her down on one switch, do something in a room, then come back to get her. You'll also have to find ways to get her across dangerous terrain. The boomerang is an alright item. It's much less useful than the slingshot due to being slower, and is also much more awkward to aim. However, it's great for carrying back faraway items, including Skulltula tokens you couldn't get previously. In Jabba Jabba's belly, it's useful for taking care of enemies that are electrified, or eliminating the electricity of something. The difficulty is scaled up a lot from Dodongo's Cavern. It's not anything you'll break your back over, but it'll still pose at least a bit more of a challenge. Constantly getting stunned by electrified things can be a bit frustrating if you're not careful though. The gold Skulltulas aren't too tough. Many of them involve the boomerang. One of the most awesome things about this dungeon is the boss. It's an absurd, deformed, fleshy monster of multiple appendages that's infected Jabu Jabu. You have to get around several layers of defense to harm the abomination. Hitting jellyfish that are protecting it at the right time with the boomerang is tricky. Seeing it explode when you finally beat it is gross but satisfying. From the strange elements and odd atmosphere to the non-linearity in the boss, I'd without a doubt call the Final Child dungeon the best one.